There you go. So yeah, glad to be back. First one of 2024. We're pretty excited. So we don't get a chance to do a ton of these, but the ones we have done are on the YouTube site there. So definitely to subscribe. But as you can see, we're pretty dedicated to the EUC side of the house. We do a lot there for Citrix, other partners. The only thing to be said about me is go Lions. It's really my biggest thing for me there to take as a takeaway. So next year is our year, and Shane and I we lead the co EUC leaders on that side of the house. But that's second to the Detroit Lions right now. So
Yeah. Oh man, Oz, I didn't know you were going to bring that up, man. I hope you're going to be okay through the rest of the webinar.
I'm fine now. I went through support group. I've got
You hit
fixed
this. I knew you were going to the support. All right, I didn't want to call it
playoff
out.
game.
Okay.
I've been through a lot, but I came back and I think I'm okay.
All right, man. I know you're rough there. So awesome. Yeah, super excited to kick things off. Yeah, first one of 2024. Thanks, Dana, for passing it over. So yeah, excited to be here today. A Dolphins fan, newly minted for the last 2 years. I haven't watched sports my whole life until like 2 years ago. Thank you, Oz and team, for getting me into sports. So I'm glad I'm able to actually put a sport logo up there. And then Oz got me my Dolphins flag on the back. So yeah, co-lead the EUC practice with Oz, kind of all things EUC for the last 20 plus years. Citrix, very, very Citrix heavy. And then over the last couple of years, transition into ABD, Nerdio, and all the goodness that all provides to diversify. That's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. And most importantly and proudest is my Apple TV and Netflix certifications. Many, many hours put into that.
I
So
keep wanting to drop those
any
off.
advice?
I keep wanting to drop those off,
You
but
can't drop them off, Oz. You got to keep them, man. It's
keep
important.
holding on.
And he tries. He dropped off my Amazon one, but we'll let it go. Apple is number by far the first. So, all right, yeah. Go
Awesome.
ahead, Krill.
Yeah. So welcome to everybody. Happy to be joining. As Oz pointed out, I'm a Bears fan, and he can rag on me now this year. It's been a long time and probably well deserved. Usually I'm on the other side of it, so I'm having to get used to being on the other side of the rivalry. But we'll get there. I think I'm through the acceptance phase at this point in time. So. I head up the Nutanix practice here at Choice. I came up in the EUC space, so my first job out of college was running a Citrix farm for a farming company. And then naturally, as things evolved, and Nutanix came to the market, got involved with that, saw the benefits that it could do for end user computing. So much so that I joined Nutanix for a little while. So I have a unique perspective of being, both on the customer side and the consulting side, as well as the vendor side. So happy to be joining these gentlemen today, and thank you everybody for your attention.
Cool, man. So yeah, so really, we're gonna kick it off with why we're doing this. We just got a couple quick things to the 2024 is here. There's been just ridiculous amounts of change, right? So we got a few big bullets here to kind of talk through, and it's just open forum with the fellows here of some of the most recent things, or what's happening, and obviously number one at the top of everybody's mind right now, anybody that's a VMware customer is of course the upheaval, nightmare, whatever you want to call it. Everybody coming up for renewals with these guys, and that's been probably the biggest upheaval so far right now that I can think of. I mean, with Krill, with you being our Nutanix practice lead, obviously that's just creating a ton of conversation. What's out there, what are we going to do, all that, right? So not just on the infrastructure side, but also on the EUC side while we're here. So obviously they divested of that, and that went over to KKR, which also owns Parallels. So we're going to talk about that in the next slide a little bit, but a lot of change there. And then, with the next one, I'll let Shane touch on that. He's going to be touching more on the Citrix stuff here later, but massive changes there for like 2 rounds in a row, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say, not the same as what Broadcom's doing, but with Broadcom, you look at this, the simplification of the SKUs is the nice thing to say, and then you look at like how it's impacting the customers, not good, right? From the Citrix perspective, they took the same approach of simplifying the SKUs. I think they went down from 700 down to 3. 3 on the kind of the DaaS, CVAD, and we'll talk about the new names side, and then obviously a few on the NetScaler, but also with that bringing in value to that, and so we'll talk to that later. So I think it's a positive shift on the Citrix side for customers that are I'd say mid to larger size, right? For the smaller customers, it kind of left a pretty big gap. And so it kind of made it a situation for us where we started to look and say, hey, as we love Citrix as the number one. We've always been an agnostic company for Azure focused customers, or we're looking at obviously AVD and then Nerdio for the enterprise capability on top. But it really left a gap for small business, and so we'll talk more about how we're kind of filling that or looking to fill that for customers. But I would say it's definitely on a more positive side than kind of where Broadcom's going and some of the decisions made there. But with that, obviously they still piss some customers off. I mean, I think any change, and really it's just, I think the best word for what's happening this year is just seismic, and both EUC as well as kind of the virtualization space. So
yeah. Yeah, and with that, I'm going to be touching on some of the Microsoft stuff. Any of the EUC pieces we're talking about is really within our stack, and Microsoft's given into some pressure here recently. So when I was thinking about this, we see some of the changes on the AWS, the workspaces side, where now M365, bring your own Windows 10, Windows 11 licenses can be used on AWS. Well, that was all pressure, right? It's all fear of lawsuit, probably, who knows, but they've bent a little bit there, right? They've also bent for example, the server OS, and for forever we've been told M365 is not going to be allowed on there. It was going to be killed in 2019, going to be killed again, and so on and so forth. They keep pushing that back. So even though Microsoft owns client licensing and Office licensing, and that's a big part of the Azure momentum, of course, they're giving into some of that pressure there. So, and then, really,
I would say, giving into some pressure. Also, I think Microsoft, like they play chess, right? Like they're they stalled the market all these years, right, until they can catch up, and now they're just running and gunning, right? So it's like they're giving into pressure, but they're also, it's interesting how they're playing the game. But definitely they had a full down. I think it's definitely a positive thing for the market, which we're excited to talk about on the AWS side here in a little bit.
Yeah. And then what can be said about AI? These two kind of go hand in hand, but everything. If you must have really been in a cave or under a rock or whatever, if you haven't seen AI in, I don't know, every app you use anymore. There's AI something or another, and that affects the EUC space, right? So we'll talk briefly about Copilot, for example. Copilot's going to be something discussed by every organization in enterprise, but not licensed by all because it's expensive in Office. But how does that affect the UC space? Well, we're seeing like bloat in FS logics and containers, because when you turn on Copilot, it does some crazy things with indexing. So there's things like that where it's definitely going to affect us, right? Copilot's in all your browsers, just AI in general, the Nutanix space over there with Crow. We got GPT in a box, private cloud AI. It's everywhere, right? Which has led to NVIDIA dominating the world at this point. If they own that space and have for quite some time, they were positioned to do what they're doing. I did see here last week the lead time of the H100s went down from 6 months to at least like within reason for 3 to 4 weeks, but they're backing these things up to the public cloud data centers in actual armored cars for their GPUs. So that tells you where we are today with AI, and there's just no way around it. I mean, it reaches into the EUC space and affects everything we're talking about, right? So, and then just post-COVID, we're out of the big ramp up over COVID, I would say, where everybody was running and gunning and trying to get employees outfitted for remote, and going through that whole process was just crazy, right? Yeah, I don't know how, in the IT world and EUC space specifically, getting people the endpoints, getting people into stuff during COVID, all of a sudden, just it was nuts, right?
It was the year of VDI for 2 years.
It was. And
can officially say it.
Yeah, and things have changed a little bit, right? So organizations are sending people back home, as you know. Yours is probably doing a little bit of that, but it's
back to the office,
hybrid, right? For quite some time. There's a lot of hybrid. It's going to stay hybrid for a lot of enterprises. So even though there's ebbs and flows, it's still, it created this whole space with, like, for example, control up and Dex. It's created new spaces in EUC because all of a sudden now being able to see that people's home stuff is so critical, because even though some are putting them back into the office and putting butts in seats in cubes again, there's still a lot of this. You can work from home compared to before. I mean, if you think back before COVID, it just seems insanity for where we are today. So the priorities are shifting now to more about securing things. The VPN stuff blew up over COVID, and now it's like, well, that might have not have been the best security play, right? But we had to do something. Now they're locking VPNs, VPNs are being locked back down, and now, we need more of the think about more apps and desktops and micro VPN and not doing a full VPN and things like that.
Yep. Yeah. Securing at the edge and also seeing, a shift back to physical again, kind of during some refresh, or seeing some of that as well. And how to manage and maintain those and still enable a seamless experience. Oz will be talking more about that on the Microsoft side.
Which then also led to the public cloud explosion, right? Complete just blowout of public cloud, I would say. More so than an explosion, but an absolute blowout of all the providers trying to keep up with enterprises needing to burst out there, which is, has created focus on why public cloud is important, burst capability. But a lot went there and then got the bill, and now it's created somewhat of a pullback in some organizations, or at least taking a better look of what we put out there. For desktops running 24/7 out in public cloud is a fantastic idea, but it costs a lot of money. So, everything was quick for 3 years. Everything was quick without really checking the ramifications, and that has changed now, right? To where everybody's taking a look at those bills, taking a look at what really makes sense. We can kind of see if there's some stuff we can shift back hybrid. Yeah. And then last but not least, of course, which Krill, this is, kind of some of the stuff that we've seen on the Broadcom side. Obviously, they're killing off perpetual. I know they gave a lifeline out last week to some. I don't know.
Yeah. They finally pulled the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody's doing it, right? Yeah. Perpetual's dead. The subscription license is everything. It's whatever your favorite insert software vendor they're going to be doing subscription licensing. So don't be surprised when they come tell you that perpetual one you had before is dead, if not dead already. So that just continues to be the case. And VMware Broadcom was one of the last to, I mean, they killed off a lot of stuff, of course, with the free, anything with the free hypervisor, anything with the perpetual, anything with a lot of their packages on the streamlines and stuff like that. But yeah,
they have a much larger impact than some other companies. When they pull that Band-Aid off, that's a really big Band-Aid. So that certainly sends some shockwaves through the market.
Yep. And we got a couple minutes left for this first part, but yeah, that has led to us with all these changes, with the craziness going on at Citrix and changes there, and really, not just focused on the small customers and whatnot. So we got a lot of strategic technology vendors from the EUC side of things that we work with and we depend on. And so that has really made it, you'll notice in the top right, for example, we got Parallels, we got W365 along with AVD, we got Amazon Workspaces noted down below there. We've started picking up the pace on really reevaluating and needing to fill our toolbox with more strategic tools that fit certain scenarios better, right, for our customers, because it's all about the customer, it's all about you guys, it's all about what is the better play for your enterprise, and Citrix is not going to be the best play for everybody. So our game card has got bigger, to where we have a few more on here, and we're working with others, and we're even continuously evaluating other plays too in this space. So I don't know, Shane, if you got anything more to add on that.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it pretty well. I think in the end of the day, it's like, you've always been since day one at Choice, have never been tied to a single vendor, right? It's in the name, right? It's always about, what's best for the customer, consultative approach, right? And so we've continuously are evaluating the different solutions. At first, it was a little hard, I feel like, for us, being super strong on the Citrix side. I mean, and you look at us as a company, I'd say we're really like a boutique, EUC shop, right? I mean, we're really sub 100 people in the organization, but our focus for the last 30 years has been end user computing, right? And so we really expanded that out. And you can see as we've done that, we've carefully cherry picked which solutions make the most sense. And what's nice around this is really ControlUp does just a phenomenal job kind of wrapping each of these solutions. So if you look at kind of what we've done is you look at, like ControlUp and IGL, these are agnostic solutions. We try to pick agnostic and not locked into a single vendor, which is why over the years we haven't, been a Horizon, historically Horizon, right? Because we like to give choice. You look at Nutanix, you look at Citrix, you look at ControlUp, these are agnostic. ControlUp works with Parallels, with Citrix, with Horizon, with AVD, and Nerdy. It's agnostic. And that just makes the most sense for how we do business. And even on the workspaces side, which we'll talk about, is really Workspaces core, which is Citrix, being the protocol and the Citrix technology that's really providing access to those workspaces on Amazon. And I don't want to spoil the thunder there, so we'll talk more about that. So, and same thing with Automate, with it being agnostic from a robotic automation standpoint. So we really try to pick solutions that make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you make a good point there with the VMware, the Horizon, now that they're owned under the same umbrella with KKR.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that yesterday.
Like
yeah.
they're gonna have to make it so they open it up for the agnostic view, to where they're not just VMware tied to the hip.
Yeah, and if they do, we said we'll retake another look, right? And so and if it makes sense. So
yeah. So with that, we're gonna do it. We got a couple quick poll slides. We're gonna give you about 45 seconds or so. Take out your phones, bring the camera up, scan the QR code here. Want to get some votes here on a couple quick poll. So I'm gonna start the timer here. Hopefully you got your cameras up.
Gonna test it and make sure it works here.
Yeah. Should. We tested a couple times, so let's see.
Am I allowed to vote?
Yeah, yeah.
I do have Windows 11 on my lap. Well, actually, I already have Windows 11. What am I talking about? I'm going to Windows 12.
You can roll out in 2024.
I'm going to 12, so.
I'm gonna give 30 more seconds here. I got the timer rolling, so.
Ozzy, timekeeper.
Heck yeah, man. I'm playing around here. 15 more seconds. Look at that. We got one going straight to 12. Nice.
I'm not going to say who that was.
I put that in there. It was fun, but you never know. Like, some people saw Windows 11 as being a burden between 10, which was solid for years and years. So, all right, cool. So there we go. So basically, 2024 seems to be the play, which is what we're seeing as well, right? So it leads to one of the talking points that I have for Windows 11, and everybody getting there, either planning it or rolling it out here in this year. So that tracks. Next one, for device identity, like what are you doing here in your organization? Yeah, and this one I think I did multiple, so you could pick if you have multiple. Please pick each one. Got 20 more seconds on that.
Kind of what I was thinking. seeing seeing hybrid
It really
starting to
is.
pick up. Yeah,
It's
what we're
Hey.
seeing.
the hybrid join's about what we're seeing, where it's up for sure on the hybrid join. A lot of that's Intune, a lot of that's do some more modern management with Intune and some other things with it for compliance and
Yeah, should put Mac in there for Crow. You know,
That's right.
I did not put Mac in there for
Jamf.
it could be
For the
domain
win.
join,
sorry, bud.
intra ID.
That one
That's
off
fine.
this. There we go.
We're confident in our own stuff.
All right, you Apple fanboys. So here we go, 70/50. So nice. Gives you a quick peek on what your counterparts are doing, you know, with their stuff. So moving from there, you know, I'm going to be touching on some of the Microsoft stuff real quick. Let me reset my timer. I got 15. So obviously the hot topics, you know, Win 10 dying, this leads to the poll question there, you know, end of life is 2025. So you either got to get started, you know, if you're not already started, you got to get something started, right? So, or, you know, maybe you're going straight to Windows 12. But either way, Windows 10 is on its way out. We're on that last part of the runway there, or what have you. 22H2, as you know, was the last. Is picking up that pace, right? That's a big one for us as a partner and helping our customers to Windows 11 and making that jump now, right? A year ago, it was kind of, it wasn't much, you know, we'd always ask, you want to start doing something with Windows 11? It's like, well, now it's picking up quick. You know, it's considered the modern workspace. So, you know, Windows 10 probably was when it came out, but nowadays, when we're talking about the modern workspace, the modern work desk, the modern desktop, with all this, it's Windows 11. You know, the actual definition from Microsoft, it's Windows 11. So anything you're doing here for the modern side of things is going to be Windows 11. You know, it's kind of funny. You know, 23H2 started on Halloween. I just noticed when I was getting ready for this, it was exactly on the 31st. You know, some people have had some difficulties with the Windows 11. You know, part of that is the Apex monster that I mentioned here. There's a lot of additional bloat and from an optimization standpoint in Windows 11 that is a big gotcha when you move from Windows 10 to where it's. I've done some from like a CPM, a file-based, you know, file-based personalization side of things. It's not as containers are a lot easier for Windows 11 just because of the Apex, the differences in all the bloat and the additional apps and things coming down with Windows 11. So, you know, that this is just one of the, like on my laptop, this is just one of the, like you could scroll up way and see just a ton more, right? The amount of Apex packages coming down to Windows 11 is ridiculous from an optimization standpoint. So, you know, just something that we're trying, we're definitely helping our customers out with, and we're trying to, you know, optimize these in a VDI side of things and make sure, you know, logins are decent. Some of the bigger ones are taken out, et cetera, et cetera. But from a usability standpoint, there's a lot of nice ones, but there's a lot of ones that just don't need anymore. So, and there's just more of this nastiness in Windows 11 than there was in Windows 10, right? So passwordless, that's becoming more and more the conversation. We had a webinar last year. We talked and demonstrated passwordless with Citrix. That auth experience, that's the modern auth experience. That's becoming more and more of an ask, you know, with YubiKey, for example. You know, that's just one of the many things. You know, you got, you know, the ability to use your phone for that, Windows Hello. This is becoming a security play now with passwordless, and it you know, you can use it with Citrix, you can use it with these other solutions, Entra ID, Azure Auth, you know, good to go. That's becoming more a thing, and Windows 11 has a little bit of robust policy control and things like that around the passwordless auth experience that Windows 10 does not have. Not really Windows 11 specific, but Entra ID join, hybrid join, they're always part of the conversation with this experience. As the poll just showed, hybrid join specifically is coming up pretty much in all conversations. Now, still a lot of traditional AD join on the physical endpoint side, of course, but hybrid joins is definitely going to be a thing, and is a thing right now. And so, not as much on that little sprinkle a little bit of the Entra ID native join, but you know, hybrid join's the thing right now. we've just had a few here and there that they're so cloud native that we can do Entra ID only, but more so it seems to be the hybrid join for us, and that's Windows 11 moving to that whole modern workplace, modern workspace, and all that hybrid join. It makes for a nice combo. And then, of course, Windows 11 Enterprise multi-session in Azure. Multi-session is still very hot. It just keeps picking up pace. That's the entitlement that they give you with those packages. Those marketplace images are constantly being updated. FS Logic's included now in the marketplace images, which I don't know if I like exactly with that staying updated, but they've had their difficulties there. But Windows 11 Enterprise multi-session is a big one. If you haven't yet heard of multi-session and you're doing something in Azure, that's part of your M365, most of the M365 entitlements, not all, but just something to keep your eye on and possibly get rid of some of the server OS situation with RDS licenses and whatnot. Obviously, Teams 2.x, so 2.1 now, and OneDrive. These are some catalysts of change for sure on this side. Single window mode, for example, was retired for the VDI optimized teams here in January, right? So that was kind of the first domino to fall, right? The next big one that everybody's looking at is classic teams, right? That end of lives here very soon. You got to get ramped up. So this is a big one for us in this space. It's a completely new design, no more Electron. It's now this WebView 2. The second domino is kind of March 31st. It just passed, where the native client defaulted to new teams, not the VDI stuff. So any of you that were, had that on the physical endpoints, that's where the policy in there doesn't allow you to control it anymore. And basically it defaulted to the new teams for those clients. And now June 30th is a big one for us on the VDI side. That's the one that everybody's working towards right now, where new teams will be enforced. When that goes end of availability for defense for classic teams, new teams will be enforced across all. It doesn't matter whatever you're using. If you're doing teams for UCC, that's going to be enforced. So this here kind of shows it a little bit better for what I was speaking to. As you can see, the classic teams, the thing to look for is this classic teams end of availability right here. Up in here is the same for all of them, but March 31st was the kind of the cutoff date for, see if I can get my laser pen. Right up here for the native clients versus where we're looking here, right? So this is it's coming quick in the summer for us. So it's definitely something that's a hot topic right now, to where we even have a jump start on that. We'll talk about that more. FS Logic's upgrades, they keeping up with their own tech. They had some problems keeping up with this whole Teams thing on their side. So as we had to wait for a hot fix to come out with FS Logic to even work with that stuff when new teams started rolling out in tech preview. And now they're still having the issues with 2019. There's just been some problems on that side with them trying to keep up with their own tech. What I mean by that is, server OS, FS Logics, with Teams is theirs, obviously, on the Microsoft side. So, that's been tricky to say the least, and has led to us doing quite a bit of more development on the Citrix profile management side, which Shane will mention. But that whole container side of things and the capabilities there, it's been a shift to think, maybe FS Logix isn't the only play in town, which it's not anymore. So the WebRTC, if you don't know, the VDI 1.0 optimization is what it uses today for backwards compatibility. Teams 2.1 is backwards compatible with that. But the new one, there's going to be a new media engine offload that doesn't depend on this. It's going to be like the VDI 2.0 or whatnot, whatever they want to call it, but that's coming. And so Teams 2.1 will be compatible with that. And then OneDrive, of course, big shifts. Like, how do I get away from legacy folder redirection? So we're helping our customers move away from that when they move to Windows 11, right? Let's get away from the legacy stuff that then goes, synchronous logon times and making it be synchronous to OneDrive, and taking advantage of those, usually what ends up being a minimum 1 terabyte storage entitlement there. So our customers are taking advantage of that, and it's definitely something I would recommend as a discussion point when you're moving to Windows 11. Entra ID and SSO, if you haven't heard of this, Entra ID is the new name, obviously, for Azure Active Directory, but more importantly, there's Entra ID SSO now, which with these updates here, that will allow us to do a single sign-on without, like on the Citrix side, if you're familiar with FAS and the PKI requirements and all that, to translate between OpenID Connect and SAML and all those back to AD. Basically, this gives an SSO into certain OSs, right? So it's GA for AVD, but it's tech preview for Citrix right now, even on the newest LTSR 2402. But Entra ID SSO is basically Win 10, Win 11, Server 2022, does not include the down level server OS operating systems. But again, it gets away from FAS and the PRT being missing on that side. That one was a big one. When you're using FAS with these, the PRT doesn't come down for that token that you get for like compliance and conditional access and things like that. So you have to plan on that when you're using FAS. It's been, it's always tricky. So that PRT isn't there with FAS, so it gets us around that. It's basically, like I said, a promising feature to streamline things and get away from the complexities there, right? And then the conditional access, the Entra ID, just in general, is all the rage these days. Of course, if you already have it, you got free, you got P1, P2 governance. There's different levels, different plans for Entra ID, conditional access, and just tons of capabilities there, depending on which one you're using. But these would obviously can be leveraged for any and all the players on the lineup card as the IDP. So, we work with all the identity vendors across the board: Cisco, Duo, Okta, Ping. Well, Ping was bought, but all of these, right? So, but Entra ID, of course, is probably the number one that comes up because you're entitled to it to some degree with the free plan for almost all of our customers, right? So, it's just, you'll see that the check marks there. There's not everything in that one, of course, and then you step up for things like conditional access, conditional access evaluation. The government's plan even has more, but passwordless is in all plans, right? So some of the passwordless stuff I was talking about, that's in all plans. And then, so with that, I would say the Entra umbrella is all encompassing. So when you hear Entra, it's not just Entra ID with that. So that umbrella is very big. It's not just ID, which was basically the Azure Active Directory part of it, but they rebranded all this into Entra and this umbrella because now they have this permissions management. They got workload ID, they got verified ID, they got it covers a lot of different things for identity overall, which is why they rebranded it. So under that umbrella, there's a lot. So Entra ID is just one piece of it, which plays into our EUC space big time. So, and then with that, the hybrid join and plus Intune, is Intune the downfall of group policies? Not really, not so fast there. There's certain things you can do, certain things you can't. It's the modernized management approach, right? So there's a lot you can do with it, but it's not as robust as some of the ADMXs that you still might need in your environment. So you kind of have to play that game of, can I use it for some things, but not everything? You can use their group policy analytics tool to take a look at that, import. Some things just aren't going to be compatible or the same kind of settings that you can set there, right? So AVD plus Intune. What's interesting here is you got the personal, obviously, usually personal across the board for anything with Intune. Otherwise, you get ghosted session IDs up there, and it's just not technically supported. But they have the pooled multi-session for Entra ID and hybrid join for AVD, probably because it's not technically non-persistent in AVD like the Citrix world. So they have that capability there. Citrix is just persistent only, single session, Entra ID, hybrid join. So Citrix has to be persistent and it's single session only right now. So device-based, user-based, much different. Enrollment's much different there. That's something to keep an eye on. User-based, it's when you log in, it tries to do the enrollment registration. It's not really the best approach, in my opinion, there for our VDI, EUC. It's device-based is what you're going to be looking at. And then really it's Intune's everywhere, right? It's required for the management of W365, for the enterprise side of things for that. And it's a beast, right? The Intune suite has a lot, as you can see up here. There's a lot in the suite, right? So we're just getting started really in our Intune journey because it reaches into everything that we're talking about. And then one of those kind of interesting, Cloud PKI is in the Intune suite now. So PKI is a PaaS service, but we haven't really played with this too much, but it's very interesting to me because it's mainly for Intune certificates. A lot of the stuff is certificates for Intune, but you can hook it into your own, but it's the first PaaS service offering. I think this was in February of 2024 for that, but Intune's becoming quite the beast. AVD with Nerdio Manager, NME, that's a big one for us, making use of those entitlements that I talked about earlier. Really, Microsoft, they're going to pitch W365 more because it's better for them. It's fixed costs. I don't care if it's on or off, you pay the same. And really just know that the heart of AVD is RDP. It's just constant feature catch up with HDX, DaaS. However, a few features came supported first on their side, but HDX is going to have a lot more. And I just put a few notes in here, like Azure Front Door. They have, ITM is on the Citrix side for their POPs. UDP, TCP fallback. Well, we have that on the Citrix side, right? But they finally got that, or the reverse TCP, but UDP for short path. They got it for managed and public networks for stun and turn, and then the security, which app protection on the Citrix side, screen capture and watermarking, the clipboard transfer redirection, that type of content, all that's fairly new on their side. It's kind of a catch up, right, to what we know on the Citrix side. And then the Windows app client, if you haven't seen that, Tech Preview Ignite, they showed it. It's pretty cool. I got it. But it's like checking into AVD or W365 or anything. It's one app to rule them all for that. And this just shows this eye chart is basically just, there's a lot that goes into AVD, right? You got to build a whole landing zone. You gotta think through all this. You got your control plane, you got your different VNets you got to carve off. So, there's basically you manage the host, the user identities, everything else is managed by the service, but there's a lot that goes into AVD, right? So it's a little different from the W365. This is a big one for certain plays, but we got the primary play for business for us is the enterprise. You got the business side for the SMB. Intune managed, again, fixed pricing, easy to consume, just outside of the networking costs is the only thing that's not part of the pricing. They have a development for an offline capability that's coming, really cool. Frontline's available now. That's fairly new, where you got a single license for 3 cloud PCs, kind of the concurrency model, which we're going to mention later, is kind of gone on the Citrix side. It's great for shift workers, follow the sun, what have you. Again, that Windows app preview is part of that, where you turn on the preview toggle and you can start using this with what you got. So a little bit simpler on the infrastructure side. As you can see here, this is kind of all in their bubble, but you can with the enterprise, not the business one, but you can connect into your own stuff with W365 Enterprise to make it more enterprise worthy, connecting into your own stuff there, your own VNets. Things like that. So a lot simplifies here because all these cloud PCs are in their bubble for the service, whereas AVD, we have to go get landing zones for those and think about all that, right? So that's what I had. Before we lead into Shane, quick poll, bust out your phones. You'll see all the questions on here better. And I'm gonna give you 30 seconds.
Awesome, man. Nice job on those updates, man. There's just
I was only 2 minutes over. 2 minutes over.
2 minutes. All right. I still got my 15 though, because I'm gonna be about 10 minutes over. So
give me a little time.
That's right.
I'll do my best to keep the time. I tend to go off script a lot, so but no, I'm gonna, like I said, there's so many changes that happen in the LTSR. So we'll cover some highlights and then have some links and stuff too.
I'm gonna scroll down here because something so old I don't want to say is at 4%.
Nice.
There we got the current release.
Oh, somebody's already jumping.
Yeah.
Nice. Love it.
I'm gonna let this go a little bit longer because I'm very interested in.
What's you scroll to the top?
So those are the LTSRs, right? So DaaS, this one.
Still 21% on 1912. I mean, there's just so many enhancements.
That's going to play into what you're talking about because that goes away here in December. So
yeah, that's your biggest. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So let's go to we got that was our big question there, I think. So cool. Shane, you should have control and be able to go in here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you everyone. So ready to rock and roll from transition from the Microsoft world over to Citrix and NetScaler. So that was we kind of announced it as separate business units, and now they're kind of bringing that brand back with Citrix, and you'll understand why here in a little bit and why it makes sense. So excited to talk through some of the updates. So I got a lot of content here, so going to do my best to streamline it and hit on some of the key points to consider. So yeah, so basically when talking about so obviously the biggest hottest topic right now obviously is hot off the press, the latest LTSR. We actually told Citrix, listen, we got a webinar coming up. We need you to drop it before, grease some palms a little bit. We got it dropped. Thank you. So you kind of have three kind of scenarios here on the LTSR side of things of where it kind of plays into your architecture or your framework there. So, obviously, you can have Citrix DaaS, or we'll talk about kind of the new naming and things like that. But, you have basically cloud control plane. And with that said, basically, you can then, obviously do the current release. We see a lot of customers do the current release for the VDA, and then you can have mixed scenarios, right? Where you have maybe a delivery group that has LTSR, VDAs where you're maybe a more, compliant based, or more compliant based environment, whether it's healthcare or financial services, maybe you want to have that LTSR VDA. You also have from another deployment standpoint, right? You can do what's called traditionally CVAD, or what's called IT managed CVAD. That's where you're running Citrix on-prem. Now it's called Citrix Private Cloud, 100% on premises. In that case, it's LTSR components on the back end plus the VDA. And then obviously you have the Citrix Workspace app client that also is traditionally BYO. You got auto updates out there for years now. You're on the latest, later CWA clients, but you still have those really compliance-driven environments where you do require, a real sturdy, LTSR VDA. And so 2402 already dropped from that perspective. All right. So with that said, we'll take a look at some of the important topics here, or highlights. So as I just mentioned, we went GA on 4/15 tax day. No coincidence there. Hopefully everyone got their taxes in on time. I know I had to file an extension because I'm last minute. So the biggest thing Oz mentioned during the update there was basically the 1912 LTSR for the 21% of the people on this call, December 2024, right? So obviously there's already either plans in place. You're looking at it very heavily. Are you going to 2203? Or are you going with the 2402? So we'll talk through some of those differences there and obviously which direction. If you're on the current release track, 2402 is really just kind of the next update there. So, business as usual for you. With that though, 1912, important to note, 1912 VDA, the latest LTSR, support there is 2012 R2. So for 2012 R2, you can't go past that 1912 VDA. So hopefully you're moving forward. Obviously the end of support there, you've already moved, hopefully you've moved forward. If not, you need to, move forward on the OS infrastructure as well as on the VDA side. Yep. So a few big CVAD, Citrix Private Cloud / CVAD highlights. So one of the biggest ones we're super excited about is the release of Web Studio. Wow. A round of applause. I hear everyone cheering. I don't know if you guys could hear it, but I got a direct line into the audience. Everyone's cheering. Web Studio, pretty much full feature parity with the REST APIs now. What you have on the DaaS side is also on premises. Citrix set out about a year and a half ago or so and said, hey, we screwed up. We over-rotated, try to push everyone to DaaS for basically coming back and saying, look, hybrid, you have options, and we're going to make that full feature parity. And they delivered. And so things like auto scale, multi-site support, all the goodness that's there within Web Studio is now 100% on premises. So if you take a look at the latest versions, it's gonna look very much like what you'd see on the DaaS side, and all the same scripts and PowerShell modules and things like that that you have configured, that will all work as well. So with that said, auto scale, which is, provides an immense amount of value for, powering up and powering down your environment, that's also there as well. So now that's added into the mix, on the on-premise release. And then with that, Storefront also, was very different from what you'd see with Workspace, right? And so even though you were running DaaS, maybe you still wanted to run Storefront at the access layer, now you can actually, it got a facelift with the latest version, and it looks, within Tech Preview, looks just like Citrix Workspace. You also have, the activity monitor, the enhanced search, categories, etc. So it really brings a nice feature parity there as well. Massive enhancements across the board with Director. Really reducing the mean time to resolution. So things like the topology view, which is really nice because when you're troubleshooting, it'll actually show you, as the user using Rendezvous, are they coming through the gateway service? Are they coming through, Citrix Gateway? What's their latency at the endpoint? So some of those metrics that you would see, typically with like Control Up Remote DX, you're seeing some of that from the CWA client coming in. So they've done a phenomenal job with the session topology view. They've also added dynamic session recording as well. So session recording is basically there where you can actually record sessions or view those sessions directly from monitor, which is really nice. And then also the logon duration. So really nice breakdown of the logon duration there. So on the Rendezvous, so on the VDA side, breaking things down, obviously one of the nice things, one of the awesome guys on our team here, Ray Davis, did a phenomenal job. Him and Ozzy on one of our most recent ones we did, Bleeding Edge there, did a ton of deep diving on the latest teams. Got a blog article out. And so with that, they worked directly with the Citrix profile management team and got the CPM hot fixes in place. And that actually made it in 2402, which is pretty badass to see that. Rendezvous V2. So basically you have your control traffic, your proxy traffic with Rendezvous V2 now. That's default out the gate. You don't require the DNS at the site level turned on, but also more importantly, you do have the ability to do connectorless deployments for pure enter ID and non-domain join scenarios. HDX got a slew of updates. Can't go into all of them right now, but traditionally, as Citrix has trended, reduced bandwidth, better graphics control, right? Audio support, massive enhancements for both gateway service around EDT lossy, audio codecs, things like that. So voice just got a ton of improvements for gateway service as well. Windows 10 and Windows 11 multi-session support. If you're an Azure customer, that's all there with the LTSR, latest LTSR VDA. And obviously, just like always, right, latest platform extensions on, vSphere, obviously vSphere, cloud, cloud, the public hyperscalers, right? So GCP, AWS, Azure, and then obviously AHV. Massive improvements around session recording, things like dynamic session recording. Audio got added into session recording for those call centers. WEM, great enhancements there, as well as Citrix profile management, increasing both security and the operational efficiencies there. On the Storefront side, just touch on a couple of these. The big highlights, honestly, Storefront didn't change too much, but there's a couple big ones. Obviously on the UI, but probably one of the bigger ones here is the uninterrupted VDA launch, right? So basically, if FAST was down, you'd have basically an outage, right? And so there is now a PowerShell script that can be run, or a PowerShell command that basically allow you to still launch with traditional Active Directory authentication if you do have an outage in your environment. So that's a big one, as well as app protection for hybrid launches, and then advanced health check, which we've been doing for years, is now enabled by default. So can't really talk to all these, but just know if you're on 1912, you're looking at obviously Windows 11 support, 2022, massive improvements with both Citrix profile management, WEM, app protection, session recording, drag and drop, which we've been asking for years, adaptive audio, etc. So you get all that, plus what you have obviously from going from 2203 LTSR up to 2402, which Web Studio is probably your biggest one there. Non-domain join support, Windows 11 multi-session in Azure, huge improvements on the HDX side of things. Teams support, obviously, with all the enhancements happening there. I highlighted some of the big ones here. Vertical load balancing now is not site level, but is also at the delivery group level, which is really nice. But one of the nice things here is really looking at things like, you know, WEM process hierarchy control, right? For those seamless apps where you're actually, you know, preventing against jailbreaking, which is huge, you know, right? So basically just launching that single process and not allowing any of the child processes. So all these additional enhancements, if you look at the bottom, you know, 57 plus on just around just operational and IT efficiency. You can't cover it on a single slide. Citrix did an awesome job on the masterclass, so definitely check that out. Kind of goes into all these in great detail, but one of the ones I'm really excited about, like I said, is the session recording with audio support. That's something that we pushed really heavily for. Still looking to see what they're doing. It's not just an operations tool, but also a security tool as well, which is really nice. So really, really nice enhancements here on the LTSR. So definitely be looking going, you know, 2402 if you're coming out the gate, you know, definitely look to go that route, or you can go the, you know, the last current release and then wait for the 2402 CU1 there. So with that said, you know, always check your VDOS infrastructure, both SQL DB and hypervisor versions. That all changes. As I mentioned, 2012 R2. SQL database side, 2016 Service Pack 2 or higher. Hypervisors, these are the support levels here. The Citrix has a nice CTX that covers that, so you want to make sure you look at that. Like any other LTSR, you know, you have your option for in place or parallel. Those are a planning discussion based on, you know, risk tolerance, you know, in your organization. If you want to go parallel, if you're doing, you know, obviously you're on older OSs, you know, it makes sense to do, you know, parallel there, or you can do, you know, in place with a swing, kind of a swing migration approach. Definitely look at the 1912 feature removals. There have been features that have been deprecated as well as removed, and kind of put some QR codes there for that mention there. So this is a slide we did in 22. This was basically entitlement updates. You got WEM and session recording in the lower versions. Then 2023 came along, and basically we said, hey, we got this new universal license and IT managed CVAD, and there's all these different directions you can go. And that was 2023. And now we're saying, hey, forget about all that because it all changed again. And so now we're in the latest here, which is which we're kind of excited about. So some of those things are still there. You know, I exaggerated that a little bit, but it really changed, and it's important to take a look. The QR code essentially covers the matrix of what changed, but essentially you're looking at 3 versions of Citrix going forward. This was a reduction of SKUs, and that reduction of SKUs consists of private cloud, which is essentially all on-prem. The biggest thing there is with the private cloud version, it's truly private cloud in the sense where you cannot run traditional CVAD without the hybrid multi-cloud license. If you're just traditional private cloud, you cannot run it as infrastructure as service in public cloud anymore. That's a big, you know, do I agree with that? No. But if you think about the name, makes sense what they're trying to do there, and no cloud provisioning. That's the other big one. So those are really, really important to consider there. So with that, they launched a universal hybrid multi-cloud license. That's basically allows you to run similar to universal, which you heard before, you know, last year. But now you can run DaaS as well as, you know, on-prem as well if you know, if you wanted to. It does include WEM and session recording, but the huge value add that they added into this license is basically things that used to be, you know, where you were advanced plus, you had to buy premium, right? Which was app protection. Obviously, we know app protection for blocking, you know, keystroke or keyboard keystroke logging, you know, screenshot protection. Device posture check is an incredible service. Think of endpoint protection there. It's now as a service. So we're looking at full device posture check, adaptive authentication. This is unlimited NetScaler, right? So premium NetScaler that you guys are used, you know, that you may be used to. You had to buy VPXs with your, you know, your CVAD or your DaaS environment. The hybrid multi-cloud license, when you buy that license net new, it essentially comes with unlimited NetScaler up to 1 terabyte of bandwidth, unlimited. So that doesn't matter how many VPXs at premium licensing, and that's a huge value added, and why they're bringing NetScaler back into the fold. NetScaler console, traditionally ADM. You know, 15 gigs of storage there, and 100% all VIPs included. That's huge. On-demand training as well. So there are a lot of value added into the universal hybrid multi-cloud. So everything that you got with Advanced Plus previously, plus WEM session recording and all these other features. And then there's this Citrix platform license, which basically they're saying, hey, and I kind of like this. You know, you might look at this and say, oh, invite only. What does that mean? And they really did this because over the years they built these premium and premium plus, and it became shelfware. right? The account managers are out there, and we never did that. Obviously, we're looking at, what's best for the customer, but from an account perspective, it's always about selling the latest version and with all the features. And they got tired of all this shelfware. So they said, look, we're going to have this platform license that's considered hybrid. It's strategic. It's invite only. It's only for the customers that are 100% invested with Citrix and want to do our full stack. And what that means by full stack is it's everything that hybrid multi-cloud includes. Plus, you got WEM for physical. You have Uber Agent, which was a recent acquisition. Analytics, so secure analytics, basically. NetScaler Premium, unlimited, so not having a throughput limitation there. And then unlimited Citrix licenses. So that means it's a site license, and then essentially there's a true up model and all these things. But at the end of the day, that's an invite only. You can't go buy that as a SKU. It's something that you work on, with your partner, hopefully us, your account rep, and you have these conversations to understand, does it make sense to do secure private access and expand beyond your traditional apps and desktops? You cannot buy a secure private access anymore as an add-on. Cannot buy analytics as an add-on. They made it part of all the platform licensing. So with that said, this is just showing the unlimited instances there on the NetScaler side. So it's a lot to digest, but it's important to understand that you have 3 editions now. Concurrent, this is probably one of the bigger announcements, and really was kind of buried in the documentation, but is concurrent a thing of the past? Interesting. Probably going to bring a lot of discussion. We're happy to work with you through this, but it's no longer measured as a unit of licensing. It's per user licensing only. So what does that mean? It means exactly that, right? So if you go look at the licensing, you can't buy a concurrent SKU. If you're an existing concurrent customer, you can continue to add, but net new is user only. On the back end, it's a concurrent license. It's very confusing on how they're doing it. So you don't have to worry about, as an admin, this check-in and check-out functionality anymore, right? It basically is all it operates like a concurrent license. You're paying per user. If you're a traditional net new concurrent customer, it makes sense for you to go that route. You have to buy user licensing, but Citrix is willing to negotiate and work on kind of this, ad hoc basis with customers that are traditionally a big concurrent customer. With that said, as we mentioned, Citrix Workspace Core and HCX Plus. So what that basically means is you're using Citrix as the quick deploy functionality within DaaS. You can now launch that functionality, use the Citrix protocol, WEM, session recording, all the goodies, device posture check with Amazon Workspaces. We have a couple of these going on right now. We're excited about, and it's tech preview. It can do the same thing for Windows 365. So bringing that Citrix protocol and the additional functionality to both Windows 365 as well as Amazon Workspaces. All right, and I know I'm over, so I'm going to wrap this up here. But device posture check is a lot more than it's basically everything you saw with an EPA. So it's looking at MAC address, certificates, GeoIP. Looking at registry settings and things like that. So and it also has Intune integration. Is this device enrolled or not? And that's all part of this hybrid multi-cloud license. If you can't log in, you get a transaction ID. You can now search and see that within Monitor. They've done a phenomenal job integrating all that. So I'll just talk to this for a second here. At the end of the day, Citrix basically looked at their observability vision, right? They have Director, they have Director for on-prem, they have Monitor for on-prem, they have Analytics, they have NetScaler Console. And what they did was they added in the acquisition of Uber Agent. And Uber Agent, for those of you that know, agent-based, does a phenomenal job, but it's Splunk backend, right? There's some other backends as well, logging analytics, et cetera. But it also has a whole security engine really around file system monitoring, risk detection, all those sorts of things. It's all baked in, but that's part of the platform license. You can't even buy this add-on. If your platform, it's included. But they did add this, so control still makes sense for customers beyond. If you're like, I'm a platform customer, does it still make sense? It does, with how it works from a physical standpoint there. Oz, I'll hand it off to you on the NetScaler side. I know I'm a few minutes over, but I took your 2 minutes back. But we'll go ahead and hand it off to you on the NetScaler side.
On this, so Krill, I'm going to leave you some time, but new branding, independent, sort of. So NetScaler was off on its own business unit, and all that stuff, but they're kind of sort of under the Citrix umbrella again. But they do have their own branding, their own website. If you haven't been out there, it's all independent from that sense. The new logo, everything like that, right? The high-profile CVEs from the NetScaler front has really positioned, workspace and gas and gateways of service. There's more focus there, especially with the more feature parity and customers not want to manage that gateway feature specifically anymore, right? So less managed customer NetScaler gateway and more workspace and gateway as a service, which is similar to AVD and all these the cloud control planes that they don't have their anything you can manage anyway. The rise and fall of unified gateway. If you remember that from a few years back, we were doing a lot of those unified gateway deployments, micro VPN, the RDP proxy, those kind of things. All that's kind of gone away. Features and functionalities replaced by SPA and native capabilities that workspace and gateway as a service can give us, right? The big life cycle shifts are coming. 13 end of life. This is it. As you can see over here on the right, highlighted this summer, 13.0 drops off. 13.1, all of our customers, we're working to move them to policies and everything to work and get to 13.1. That's going to be the new maintenance channel. 14.1 is the feature release branch. So all that changes here as you can see, coming up here this summer. So this is a big one. There's the QR code there. The pooled licensing is kind of a necessary evil. I don't really agree with pooled licensing. It was cool when it came out, but then we had problems with the proxy for the licensing server. If it crashes, even though there's a grace, you can cause an outage. There's flexibility there, but additional licensing component around for that unlimited throughput that Shane talked about, you're going to have it as pooled licensing for that. And then just, there's every different form factor you can think of, and then adaptive auth too. So adaptive auth, we didn't mention it before, but you're given that in the universal hybrid multi-cloud as well. That's where it's a semi-PaaS service that Citrix manages most of the NetScaler piece, but not all. This is just all about hardware versus software versus PaaS. When you look at these different ones, NPX, SDX, on down. Just streamlined SKUs there, reduction in available hardware models. So they started simplifying that last year. Obviously, these are all available in every public cloud you can think of. The big three, GCP, AWS, Azure, robust feature set. We talk to customers all the time. Well, what if I use Azure Firewall or this, that, and the other thing? You can do all of it within NetScaler if you want. It's very robust what you can do with NetScaler. And the NetScaler console, especially now with the new SKUs and being available for all the capability, you got to use it, right? Upgrades, it's been huge with these CVEs that come out and just being able to push them. It's very stable as far as pushing those upgrades and doing that. And you can do so many across the board just in one click and schedule that. Really, this is everything and how robust NetScaler is on that side of the fence. I just want to touch briefly on that. There's been a ton of changes there on the NetScaler side for Citrix and NetScaler. And that's been happening here in 2023 and 2024, just what they're doing there. So exciting stuff. And we were going to have a poll question, but I don't know if we're going to have time, Krill, but I'll let you take it from there, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks. So now we're going to talk about some updates, particularly around the Nutanix side. And we're always going to start off with the fun stuff first, as we're going to talk about licensing. Since we're talking about EUC, I think it's key to point out that when you look at the major platform vendors, Nutanix is the only one out there that still is committed to EUC from the ground up, not just with the technology, but also licensing it specifically for your EUC environment. So, vSphere for desktops with VMware customers was always a big thing to get those enterprise features for VDI without having to pay for it like traditional data center virtualization. That's gone. If you still have your perpetual and you're on there, you have it for a little while, but come that next renewal, it's gone. Zen Server is changing its licensing. They kind of have given a transition so that there's a promo through the end of the year. But once you get past that, you're going to be paying for Zen Server for your EUC environment. So with Nutanix, you license it for your EUC environment. You license it by user. So then in that cluster, you can pack that thing full of CPU, memory, storage, all that you want, because you're paying for it based off of the user. And it's the same exact software levels as you would if you were buying it for a traditional server virtualization. So whatever the NCI Pro has, VDI Pro is going to have. And the nice piece of it too is that files is included. So technically they call it unified storage because it could be objects, it could be files, it could be volumes. But traditionally what we're seeing is end user computing environments are going to leverage Nutanix files because it's a great way to keep those profiles local, keep that end user data local, And so you have that included. So in addition to having just the core platform that the VDIs are going to run on, you have that user storage to run with it on top of that. We've got some updates to software. So license enforcement. So before, you still have that nag screen at the top where it would say, you know, hey, you're not in compliance. And you could just kind of say, yeah, I get it. I know that. That's not going to be the case anymore. So if you're on the short-term release cycle where you're getting all those new features and taking advantage of that, that license enforcement is out there now. And then for the next long-term service release, which we're expecting that to come out sometime in the summer, is what we're hearing. License enforcement is going to come out for that. So we were supposed to have a long-term service release, now pretty much. We're expecting it to drop anytime. So the 6.8 line of AOS, it's not going to be an LTS. It's going to be more like an extended short-term release cycle. So there's some changes that are happening with software code. So based off of that, it's going to be, hey, it's going to be short term, but it's going to be a little bit longer than what we currently have with our short term, where you're having to stay on that current release and do those upgrades at a much quicker pace. So as we're preparing to get some of these updates for whether it's you're going to be on the short-term cycle or you're going to go to the next LTS, if you are leveraging Citrix in the environment, that AHV plugin that goes along with it, that needs to be updated. So it's really not a major upgrade to add that onto your Citrix infrastructure. But from a compatibility perspective, you absolutely want to take care of that. Go ahead and take care of that now so that you don't have to worry about that. Get into the spot where you upgrade it now. Hey, my machines won't spin up. They won't spin down. I can't provision new machines. Just go ahead and take care of it now. It'll work as it is now, and then you set yourself up for the future. And then as we talk about, just Nutanix commitment to end user computing, we talked about how we're always looking at, what other things are out there on the market to, whether it's to fit a particular use case, or as Citrix has shifted some of their focus to more enterprise and there's not things as readily available for the small, medium business. Nutanix is looking across the market as well. So they have a ton of information out there, whether it's just general, hey, I want to do Windows 11 on AHV. What are the best practices? What are the things that I need to know about? If you're potentially looking at parallel RAS as a replacement for Citrix, Nutanix has already built out that reference architecture for it. They're testing it. They're working with the Parallels team. Or you're saying, hey, I'm going to extend my environment out to Azure, to AWS, and I want to know, does this look differently if I put a Nutanix cluster in AWS and Azure? And then kind of the coup de grace is the Nutanix validated design. So this is where soup to nuts, software, hardware versions, the whole thing, they plan it out. And, if you want to be able to say, go to Nutanix, go to Citrix, say, I want to ensure this, give me everything that I'm going to need for that. That's what a Nutanix validated design is. So they've got those out there for EUC based workloads. So if you're a Nutanix customer, make best use of that, whether it's, updating things for Windows 11 and what do I need to be prepared for that, FS Logics, how does that work on Nutanix? A ton of great information. There's probably close to 50 articles. I just threw 5 out there that kind of give you that breadth of information as far as what all different things from an EUC perspective Nutanix is looking at, making sure that it provides you the optimal experience for. So Windows 11. So the poll showed that this is the year for Windows 11. So what do we need to prepare for our Nutanix environments to support Windows 11? So the big thing with Windows 11 is TPM. And then specifically for VDI workloads, being able to support VTPM. So if you're running AHV and wanting to throw Windows 11 on top of that, we need to make sure that we're on Prism Central 2022.9, that if we're on the long-term service release, that we're at least .6.5.1, and that we upgrade those VirtIO drivers. We're starting to use those 1.2.1. I know a lot of times I see customers don't seem to keep the VirtIO quite as up to date because it still just works, but we definitely need to make sure that we're availing ourselves of those updated drivers, particularly for Windows 11. The fun part with Windows 11 right now with Nutanix is being able to back it up or do a DR solution where, hey, I want to have this at multiple data centers. Because right now, the support for that are a little bit on different tracks. So if we want to be able to replicate that image to a different data center, then we need to be on Prism Central 2023.3. And if you're a current Nutanix customer and you get the field advisories and support update articles, you'll probably have seen there have been some issues around stability, particularly if there's additional features. So that certainly is a challenge. And there's also a major infrastructure, not an architecture change as you go from some of the older versions of Prism Central to 2023 line of Prism Central. So we run into that. So if you have challenges with that, don't hesitate to reach out. But that certainly has been a challenge for, I want to be able to, if I've got a metro data center and I want to make sure I get this on both sides. Right now, you're going to have to kind of push the limits and maybe push forward on that Prism Central and handle that. You also need to be right now, the short-term cycle is the only one that supports that as well. So, depending on what your risk posture is and kind of what your deployment is, it's a little bit in flux right now. So obviously, as the new updates come out with the next LTS, hoping to see all of those things get aligned. But the nice thing is if you do that backup DR, you can recover that out to an NC2 instance. So it's not just a, hey, I want to be able to do, get that image from one data center to the other. If public cloud is part of where you're looking to go, and you're going to put a Nutanix cluster, say, out in Azure to take advantage of some of that for a DR perspective, then we can absolutely replicate that out into an Azure instance. And that's really where we're seeing a lot of investigation and customers coming to us and asking questions is around NC2 and what that opens up for them. So with files, now there's multi Prism Central Smart DR. So Smart DR allows us to, rather than replicating the entire file server and doing an entire failover of everything, we can replicate just at a share level. So now, rather than saying, hey, I have to have everything under one management umbrella, if everything's on-prem and something is out in NC2 and Azure, now I've got two different Prism Centrals. How do I replicate that? We can take care of that. And Nutanix Files is supported out on NC2 and Azure as of the 4.3 release. So now you kind of have that ability to take everything that you're doing in your on-prem data center and your private cloud and then be able to do that out into Azure. And we're seeing a lot of people who are looking at that because it provides a number of advantages. One, it's the same software that you're used to using. So you don't have to change up any of those management procedures, those build processes, support processes. They are all the same because foundationally it's the same software. It's just a difference of whether it's running on some hardware that you own or some hardware that AWS or Azure owns. It gives you some flexibility from instance sizes. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a conversation with a customer and they're like, well, I need something where it's like 2 vCPUs, but I need 10 gigs of memory. Well, we got to jump up to the next instance size to get that 10 gigs of memory or more. And so that increases CPU usage. And so you can't quite tune it just the way that you want to. So since this is just a Nutanix cluster, you can build out those VDI sizes, those server sizes to whatever spec works for you and what you've tested off of in your environment without having to worry about does Microsoft or does AWS have something that fits that. And that allows you to worry less about that and worry about how do I get that application, that workload out into public cloud. Again, it's AHV to AHV, so we just migrate it from one to the other. And we don't have to worry about refactoring applications, figuring out, hey, does the database follow? How does the database follow? All that good stuff. And I know, when we talk about public cloud, it sounds a little odd to say that it's cost effective to put a piece of software on top of a bare metal instance that somebody else is hosting. But because of the fact that, we talk about we can get away from worrying about those instance sizes, we can tune that a little bit better. then it gives us that flexibility. We can potentially be more dense and targeted in what our workloads are. So prime example that I had with a customer is that, we were looking at about 180 VDIs and doing just native Azure. It was going to cost them around $350,000. And that was, that was an annual, or sorry, that was for a 3-year commitment. So they were buying in at the beginning, and they were committed to that for 3 years. So another customer was looking at NC2 and Azure, and they're going to be able to get just as many, if not more, workloads on that same for about $30,000 to $40,000 less, because again, they can tune some of those instance sizes where, based off the sizing for the other customer, they had to bump up on quite a number of their instance sizes to meet what that workload was. So, it sounds a little counterintuitive at first to say, hey, I'm going to load something else into the public cloud before I start putting my workloads on top of that. But it really gives you that flexibility, and that flexibility can really pay off for you. And then particularly for a DR solution, it really gives you that flexibility. So in a traditional DR, if we're talking about 2 data centers and I've got, 20 hosts in one data center, well, then to be able to plan for that DR, I need my 20 hosts in my secondary data center as well. With doing it in public cloud, we can say, okay, I've got my 20 hosts that are on-prem, but for Nutanix, I just need 3 nodes to start off with. And if I can support, say, the storage capabilities for that, then I may be able to do it with just 3 nodes to start off with. Or maybe I need to support the storage replication needs. I need 10 nodes. But rather than doing a full-on like for like, I can be more cost effective, get it out there. And then if I need to grow that, say I do need to do a full DR and I need additional compute, but the storage is already there, well, then I can add in some nodes to that cluster and I can spin that up rather than paying for those additional 10 nodes. I may only need to pay for the first 10 to make sure everything is out there. And then when I call my DR, when I fail everything over, then I add in those other 10 nodes for the period of time that I need them. And then we can pull those back when we're done. Once we fail back and we're in our primary data center, we can start pulling those back. The other nice thing too is, when you talk about not having to worry about the hardware, you have the ability to be able to mix and match nodes, particularly they announced it on the AWS side. And I don't know that it's on the Azure side, but I would expect it to be soon. But you can mix and match those bare metal instance types within the cluster. So if I need, or I just want to take advantage of newer processors, faster storage, or additional capabilities that the hyperscalers come out with, then I'm going to add in that new node, expand my cluster. I can drop off the other one and I can just stair step it so that you can really increase your performance. Or if you're doing, a production workload as well, add in that additional node, take advantage of it, drop out one of the older nodes and just stair step that to be able to get those additional resources, take advantage of NC2 is going to self heal itself, but now too from how do I make sure that I'm getting the best performance ongoing? So when Azure comes out with additional features and functionalities, you're ready to take advantage of those right away. So if you want to try that stuff out, Nutanix has Test Drive where you can log in and it's a simulated environment. So whether it's NC2, whether it's Nutanix Cloud Manager, Nutanix Files, you can do all of that in kind of a simulated fashion. There are trials that we can do for NC2 in Azure and NC2 in AWS. Reach out to us. We've done quite a bit of this. We've got an NC2 in AWS that we hibernate that allows us to spin that up, spin that down for demos and for testing purposes. So happy to jump on a call with you and talk through it further. We also have a bunch of Jumpstarts. So if you say, hey, I just need a little help getting this piece of the environment moving forward, we'll help you out. We'll get you started. It's not going to be, a full soup to nuts type of a deployment, but we'll help you move that along. So whether it's, Nutanix Files, NC2 and Azure AWS, we're seeing a lot of people, right now who are saying, hey, what do I need to do those first steps to migrate my vSphere environment over to Nutanix AHV because I don't want to pay that bill. So we'll help you out with that. and get you started on your way. And then if you want us to take it even further and help you out and move that along so you don't have to pay that VMware bill, happy to stay on with you and get the whole thing moving for you.
Yep, and we're getting up time, and I know Ellie has a survey question, but with the Jumpstart, like you mentioned, we got several, right? On the EUC side, we've got the advisory workshops, session recording, Citrix Cloud, on, right? The 3D Pro with NVIDIA. We've got a slew of Jumpstarts to help you in your EUC journey and what you're doing. The big one that goes in line with this, we got this new the Teams 2.1 Jumpstart. Ray Davis on our team's been working really hard on this, and this is it's complex getting there, and it's fantastic what he's done here and what we've done to get this ready for you guys. So you don't have to worry about all the 42 different things you got to think about with the new teams and moving there. For what I discussed earlier, you can jump on this. And then of course our advisory workshops that Shane and I are doing. We have a limited amount of slots during the year, but hit us up if you want to talk through everything in your EUC ecosystem and what makes sense, or what DaaS solution, what identity, what public cloud, what to do with the Nutanix, so on and so forth. So we got those going on, and that's where we reach the end. And I know Ellie has a poll question, so you can get your stake. So I will let Ellie take that. Yeah. There was one question in there about Zen server included with CVAD. No, it's not. They decoupled that. There was only a couple questions, but that was they've since decoupled it. They made it free for a little bit, but it's going to be per core price going forward. Same with Hyper-V, for example. There's no more free Hyper-V. Everything you got to pay to play, looks like. So, and I don't know what other questions. It looks like the survey will automatically populate in the browser to get your t-shirt and stakes, is what I'm being told. So please take the survey. I don't know if everybody's seeing that. I'm still in presenter view here. So
yeah,
everybody happens at the wrap up when we end. Yeah.
Yep, you will get that as soon as we close this out. So
okay, perfect. So nothing I need to do here. So
no, just one. Oz, Shane K, Benjamin, awesome job, awesome content. You guys covered a ton of ground. Again, the survey, there's some questions there, some feedback. We'd greatly appreciate it. We always mindful of feedback and things that we can maybe do to bring more value in these sessions, or considerations like that, or what things you guys took away that were the most meaningful for you. So thanks in advance for taking time to do that. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you guys' trust and partnership. And again, ton of updates, a lot of changes. We're here to kind of be a resource in any capacity to help you guys be successful in your journeys, and look forward to helping out. So again, thanks everybody. Enjoy your day.
Thanks a ton.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye.